Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Linda Williams, President of the Medical Alumni Association and a graduate of the class of 1984. We're glad to see that you've joined us to hear from some of our current medical students. I know that you will be very impressed. Dean Reilly reported at our most recent board meeting that for the class of 2024, there were 10,400 applicants. And already for the class of 2025, with interviews just beginning this week, the number of applicants have passed 12,000. Our students are truly remarkable, and we have so much to be proud of here at our alma mater. But before we enjoy our student panel, let's welcome Dr. John Reilly, Dean of the CU School of Medicine and Vice Chancellor for Health Affairs at the CU Anschutz Medical Campus. He holds the Richard D. Krugman Endowed Chair and joined the university just over 5 years ago. Prior to joining CU, Dean Reilly was professor and chair of the Department of Medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. His education and training include an undergraduate degree in chemistry from Dartmouth and a medical degree from Harvard, with postgraduate work at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston and at Intermountain Healthcare in Salt Lake City. His research expertise includes pulmonary diseases, including emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and lung cancer. Please join me in welcoming Dean Reilly.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for attending this virtual reunion. It's my pleasure to welcome you and give you a bit of an update on what's going on at the School of Medicine. So over the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to give you a briefing. I know we have people here from a variety of years, so some of you may have attended med school on our campus and some of you were at Ninth in Colorado. And then we'll leave a few minutes at the end for questions. So let me see if I can, there we go. So we have not changed in terms of our three missions: education, outstanding clinical care, and performing basic and clinical and translational research. We do have a number of degree programs in the School of Medicine now. The MD degree, of course, and an MD PhD program, a physician assistant program that takes roughly 44 students per year, a physical therapy program that takes between 75 and 80 students a year, and an anesthesia assistance program, which is now up to about 15 students per year. We are, as all of you probably know, located on the Anschutz Medical Campus and have, in that setting, the good fortune to be geographically close to University Hospital, which is the flagship hospital of the UC Health System, Children's Hospital of Colorado, and most recently the Rocky Mountain VA Medical Center, who about 18 months ago moved out from downtown Denver. For the past 4 or 5 years, we have had a branch campus in Colorado Springs where we have 24 students who go down and spend their third year in a longitudinally integrated curriculum doing their third year clinical activities, and then they return to our campus for the fourth year. We are going to open next year a branch campus in Fort Collins in collaboration with Colorado State. That will be, unlike Colorado Springs, that will be a 4-year branch campus, and the first class for that will be admitted next year. So for those of you who haven't been to our campus and might have gone to school at Ninth in Colorado, we are the former Fitzsimmons Army base, and you can see here what was called Building 500, which was the Army Base Hospital, which is about one of the few things left from the prior campus. Here are research buildings, here are education buildings, here's Children's Hospital, and here's University Hospital. And here, of course, are the Rocky Mountains, and you can see the Denver skyline down here. A few scenes from the campus. This is the entrance looking straight down the middle of the campus. This is our education quadrangle. So this is where our dental students, medical students, physical therapy students, and nursing students all attend classes. This is another view of that. This is also the quadrangle where we hold graduation every year, that we can actually do it in person, our white coat ceremony and other public ceremonies. This is the walkway to the research part of the campus, where we have 4 research buildings and about 650,000 square feet of research labs. So Dr. Williams mentioned to you about our medical student population, and you're going to hear from them on the panel as soon as I finish blathering here. You can see we've had a dramatic increase in our number of applications. Our class size is 184. 160 do their clinical rotations here, and as I mentioned, 24 down in Colorado Springs. 2 years ago, we had 8,600 applications. Last year, 10,400. At a time when the national rates of increase in applications were, as you see in these parentheses, 1% or basically flat. And so far this year, as you heard, we have passed the 12,000 application mark. Our class of 2024 is about almost 45% from Colorado, 57% female. Over a quarter of them come from a category that's traditionally underrepresented in medicine. And 17% of the class are in this category EO1, which means that, among other things, that they are the first in their family to attend college. The alumni relations team briefed me on the fact that all of you might be interested in what it costs to go to medical school these days. So we've done a few things here to try to reduce the cost. Our average student debt for a graduating medical student who has debt, and about 3/4 of our students have debt, is about $200,000. What we've done to try to reduce that burden is eliminated all the student fees, removed the membership cost for the Anschutz Health Wellness Center, and changed to a system where the tuition you pay your first year of medical school is the same tuition you'll pay for all 4 years of medical school. And we have frozen the so-called accountable student fee, which is the cost that out-of-state students pay, level for the last 5 years. The result of that is medical school is not cheap, but it's not very much more expensive now than it was 5 years ago. You can see the numbers on this slide. For somebody who graduated last spring, their total cost of tuition was about $147,000 if they were a Colorado resident, and about $250,000 if they were from out of state. We've tried to also, at the same time, increase our scholarships, and you can see listed on this slide a number of the activities over the past few years. A generous gift from the Anschutz Foundation, a very generous gift from one of your fellow alumni, Doc Lopez. Our faculty practice here called CU Medicine gave $1 million in scholarship support last year and just committed to give another $1 million again this year. And we've had an active fundraising campaign targeting people to contribute to our scholarship funds. Starting next year, we'll be rolling out a new curriculum emphasizing leadership, curiosity, and commitment. The big changes for this curriculum are the clinical experience is moving up into the second year. When I went to medical school in the traditional block curriculum, and for most of you on this call, the foundational clerkships were in the third year. Then we're bringing people back for this combination of advanced science and advanced clinical experiences in years 3 and years 4. All the clinical experiences will be a so-called longitudinal integrated curriculum. So rather than doing one area at a time for a period of 4 or 6 or 8 weeks, they're all mixed together. So you would do pediatrics over the course of the year, you would do surgery over the course of the year, you would do medicine over the course of the year. So what does med school look like now? So some things are the same and some things are different. You're going to hear from our students. Old guys like me like to whine about millennials, but in fact, if you look at our students, they are highly motivated, highly accomplished, and are going into medicine for all the right reasons. Our average age of students on entry now is 24 years old. Some courses look pretty much the way they did when I was in med school 40 years ago. Gross anatomy is still gross anatomy. Lecture halls are still lecture halls, and it's still a lot of work. What's different now is that most students don't go to lecture. They watch the archived video on the web. The aforementioned longitudinal integrated curriculum. We use a lot of simulation now in our simulation lab to supplement clinical training. And there's a lot more science now than there was a couple generations ago. So the last few slides here, I'm just going to close with an overview of the school overall. This is what our economic trends have looked like for the past 5 years. So you can see steady growth in our clinical practice, which is this line, good growth in our grants portfolio, which is this line, and pretty flat tuition and fees and state appropriations. If we want to cover the span of more of the alumni are participating in this call, this is what it looks like for the last 38 years. You can see this is the growth of the practice plan. This is the growth of our grants and contracts. This is our philanthropy. And you can see down here is our tuition and our state support. I have a lot of faculty who ask for more, quote, hard money, guaranteed so they don't have to write grants. And so I'd like to show them this slide, which is, this is what our state support from the state of Colorado has done over the last 38 years. As I mentioned earlier, a very positive trend in research awards, both federal and non-federal. Most of our federal money is from the National Institutes of Health. Substantial growth in our faculty. So we've added about 1,000 faculty over the past 5 years. And active involvement in the Aurora community. We have a student-run volunteer clinic, the Dawn Clinic for uninsured patients that we provide both faculty supervision for and financial support in partnership with other members of our campus. And we recently opened, this, you can tell this slide is out of date, on January 13th, opened up a new federally qualified health center in partnership with Salud in temporary quarters that will be the prelude to a project called the Aurora Community Health Commons, which we're very excited. And of course, no talk about medicine in 2020 would be complete without talking about the impact of COVID. Long story short, University Hospital here provided care to more COVID patients than any other hospital in the state of Colorado. And at the peak, we were almost up to 160 patients in the hospital, half of whom were in ICUs. So we doubled our ICU capacity in about 2 weeks. We moved most of our ambulatory care to a virtual platform, and at the peak, we're doing over 4,000 visits a day on the virtual platform. And we moved most of our education to a virtual platform. We closed down our research labs for the better part of 2 months. I'm happy to say since June, we have moved our 3rd and 4th year students back into clinical rotations, and things are pretty much back to normal there. We now have a mix of in-person and virtual education for the 1st and 2nd year medical students. We've reopened our research labs with appropriate social distancing. And if you look at our activity for the month of September, it's pretty much on level for what our activity was in September of 2019. At the peak of the COVID experience in April, we were losing about $1 million a day in the School of Medicine, and Children's and University Hospital were losing money as well. All of those have pretty much bounced back. So I'm going to close with this slide here to highlight that the school remains in a very dynamic environment. And it's only when I put together a talk like this, I realize how much things have changed during my 5-year tenure as dean so far. I'm going to close there and open up the floor for questions. And I will be monitoring the chat room if anybody wants to put their questions in there. All right, I'm not seeing any. So once again, I want to thank you.
Dean Reilly, we
Yeah.
actually we have one question in the Q&A, and I'll read it really quick for you. Are you doing any specific COVID training for students?
Yeah, that's a good question, and thank you for that. So when the COVID pandemic started and we had to pull students out of the clinical arena, we created a 3rd-year COVID curriculum over the course of about 2 months. It included what I would call public health methodology, education on how to deal with pandemics, some virology, so people actually had a better understanding of coronaviruses and how infectious pathogens can move from the animal community into the human community. Some pharmacology around antiviral development, and some education around vaccine development. So it was very well received, and in fact picked up by a number of other medical schools around the country. And Shanta Zimmer, our Senior Associate Dean for Education, and her team deserve a lot of credit for having created that very quickly. Now we have everybody back in the workplace, but obviously some elements of that curriculum will remain. So a couple questions in the chat. What percentage of medical students are from out of state and which states? It varies a little bit from class to class, but I would say overall the past couple of years we're about 50-50, in-state, out of state. And I think in last year's admitted class, don't hold me to this, I think we had students from 38 different states, and pretty much everywhere. It's about 85 different colleges. We have students from, with the big ones, the quantitatively the largest ones being the UC Boulder campus, Colorado State, and UC Denver, but college students from all over the country. The other question in the chat is, what changes have been made at the 9th and Colorado location? So for those of you who went to med school there, it's gone. It was sold to a real estate developer. There was a big event, I think 2 or 3 years ago now, where they imploded the buildings there. And it is being redeveloped as a mixed commercial residential area. The VA down there has largely closed and moved out to our campus. And my understanding is that they're going to be selling that property as well. Okay, are you using Denver General Hospital for clinical use? The answer is yes. It's now called Denver Health. We have, at any given time, we probably have 300 medical students and residents at Denver Health. With the exception of emergency medicine, all the residencies are based at the university, but we rotate students and residents from almost all the programs through there. It's a very important component of our educational footprint and a very important partner to us. And the last question I see in the chat is, where were the class photos placed? I can answer that question for you pretty easily because they're right outside my office. So if you come into Building 500, the old Fitzsimmons Army Base Hospital, and go up the flight of stairs into the main lobby, to the right are all the medical education offices, and the corridors in that part of the building are lined with the class photos starting in the early 1900s all the way up to the present day. In the Office of Student Life is the composite photo of the most recent graduating class. So right now, it's the class of 2020 whose composite photo is on the easel in there. And then this coming spring, that'll move down and be hung up on the wall, and the class of 2024 will be on display there. Specialties are your students going into? Pretty much everything. In recent years, and we have an ongoing dialogue with some of our members of the Department of Family Medicine about what constitutes primary care. But if you count primary care as internal medicine, family medicine, then probably about 30% of our class goes into a primary care specialty. In recent years, in emergency medicine and anesthesiology have been pretty popular. But in every year, we pretty much send students into every specialty. We have pretty good results in the match. I would say every year we have 1 or 2 students who don't match into the specialty they want. And it's usually a case of students not being realistic about whether they're competitive for certain types of programs. So For instance, dermatology is a highly competitive residency to get. Ophthalmology is a highly competitive residency to get. And if you're in the bottom quarter of the class, it would be very hard to match into those specialties. If you decide that's what you want to do anyway, despite all the advice, then every year we have a handful of students who don't match in those things, usually 2 or 3. Are rural health programs continuing? Yes. So we have a rural track for medical students run by Mark Deutschman in the Department of Family Medicine. We have usually about 24 students per class in that track. We also have sponsor 2 rural family medicine residencies where the trainees do their first year of training on our campus, and then they go out to, one's in Sterling, and I forget where the other one is, out to rural locations for the final 2 years. So another question about how well are we doing protecting staff and students from contracting COVID? So I've got one faculty member right now who has COVID who may have picked it up at work. But since the onset of this pandemic, after the first week when we had some exposures to people who we didn't realize had COVID when they were admitted, we have not had, other than the one doctor I just mentioned, we have not had anybody contract COVID in the clinical care arena. All told, for the campus, for the University of Colorado, all the schools, pharmacy, nursing, medicine, dental medicine, public health, we've had a total of, and that altogether is well over 10,000 people. We've had a total of 40 cases, and as best we can determine, all of those cases were contracted in settings other than the campus, out in the real world. And I'll close out here with this last question. Are most state medical schools accepting more applicants from out of state? I think, I don't know what the ratios are at every school, but almost every state medical school accepts out-of-state applicants. I think the last holdout that I know of was the University of Massachusetts, and about 3 or 4 years ago, they started accepting out-of-state applicants. We don't get very much state support, as I showed you on that slide. It's right around 1.5% of our total budget. Many of our students who come here for medical school stay in Colorado for further training, so they become Colorado residents. Your chances of getting in from Colorado, if you're a Colorado medical student, are much higher than if you are from out of state. So it's something like 15% of our applicants are from Colorado, and less than 15% of our applicants are from Colorado, and about half of our class is from Colorado. My request of our admissions committee is that they accept the strongest possible students that we can get. And then we turn them into Coloradans once they get here. And I think I have used up my allotted time here. I don't want to stand in the way of you being able to interact with our student panel. So once again, I want to reiterate my thanks to all of you for attending. I will be speaking with some of you, I think, tonight at some of the virtual class reunions. And I'm going to mute myself and turn it back over to Dr. Williams to introduce our panel, I think.
Thank you, Dean Reilly. Yes, I would like to introduce our student panelists at this time. So first, Kyla Burrows, MD candidate, class of 2021. Next is Alec Mansour, MD candidate, class of 2023. And last is Brenda Law, MD candidate, class of 2023 as well. So welcome to all of you. So for the next portion of this reunion activity, I'm going to ask the medical students, each of them 2 questions. And then after that, I'll provide some direction, but we're going to be opening it up to the audience to ask whatever questions you would like of our medical student panel. So the first question, I'm going to ask the same question for all 3 of you. So why did you choose CU Anschutz? So Kyla, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. So I'm Kyla. I'm a 4th-year medical student, and I'm also one of our class co-presidents. Basically, the moment that I set my sights on going to medical school and becoming a doctor, I knew that I wanted to go to CU. I grew up in Winter Park, which is just a couple-hour drive from Denver, and then I went to CU Boulder for undergrad, and I really just could not picture myself leaving the state. I had interactions with the UC health system as well as many of my family members, and I was just always blown away by the care that we received. And so for that and the proximity to the mountains and my family, I knew I wanted to stay in Colorado and go to CU.
All right, next, Brenda.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be able to speak to you all today. My name is Brenda, and I am a 2nd-year medical student. I'm also a co-president for my class as well, alongside Alec, who will be speaking next. Similar to Kyla, I am also born and raised here in Colorado. I love Colorado, and I couldn't think of anywhere else I'd rather be, especially for medical school. My family is also one of my top priorities, so choosing a place that was in close proximity to them was really important to me. I wanted to be able to just take care of them and check in with them whenever I wanted. So Colorado was the obvious choice for me then for that reason. And interviewing here actually also made a huge impact on my decision. I fell in love with the campus and fell in love with the people while I was here, and I actually whipped out my journal. I have it like right here, and it's a journal that I started before medical school started. And I have an entry from the day of the interview, and I have like a sentence in here that I think pretty much sums up why I really chose CU. And in here I wrote, I always knew I liked CU, but I fell in love with it today. And I think it was so true when I was there. And on my interview day, I still remember when Dean Zender went around the room to ask us all to share one word about how we were feeling. And the one word I ended up choosing was home, and it just felt right. So it was really the people who showed that they really cared while I was here that really also solidified my decision to go to CU.
All right, thank you. Alec?
Hello, thanks for having me here. I'm Alec. As Brenda mentioned, I'm her co-president of the 2nd-year class. And why I chose to come to Colorado, other than it being the best school that I've interviewed at, of course, was really the culture that the campus created. So coming here, seeing all the hospitals and the mountains and everything that you're able to do in the city, making it amazing, is just a little bit of a side dish that compares to the student body and the faculty that we have here. I was lucky enough to spend some time with classmates and members of the class in the year above me when I was interviewing and when I was looking here at Second Look Day, to the point where every other school did not add up, did not compare to the student body in terms of how welcoming, how friendly, and how much support that I had here. I remember very distinctively a moment where me and another classmate in the 2nd-year class were attending second look day for a school in our home state. Both of us are from the state of Michigan. We're both in the parking lot, just staring at each other for about 5 seconds of silence until we look at each other and say, Colorado, at the same time. And now we're both here. So I think for someone who's never left, more than 30 minutes away from where he was born, to only see the state of Colorado a couple of times and only see the school a couple of times, to choose to spend the next 4 years of his life here, says a lot about the school and the people that are here. So that's why I chose Colorado. And I know I made the right choice.
Thank you, Alec. Thank you. You're our best PR team right here. So next I'm going to ask each of you a different question. So I'll start with Kyla again, since she's our senior student here, senior student member, and ask you, are there any moments or anecdotes from your education that you'd like to share with the audience?
There are so many moments from medical school, but in the clinical realm, there's a few that really stick out to me. I started my third year on OBGYN, and I actually started on night. So my very first day of third year was a night. And I was so excited because I thought that's what I wanted to go into, but I wasn't sure yet. And it had been a pretty calm night. Not much had been going on. And then my attending grabbed me and he was like, all right, it's time to deliver a baby. And I think it was like 3 in the morning, and I had so much adrenaline. I was so excited. And so we rushed off to the OR, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, we're going to the OR. And on the way, he explained to me that the patient was having twins. And he was like, how do you feel about delivering the first twin? I was like, that sounds like the coolest thing I could ever imagine. And it really was. I will never forget. I have like such vivid memories of how that delivery went, and how I was surprisingly like tearing up. I was not expecting it because there was just so many emotions in that room. And I went through third year, and I was like, I don't know if I could ever match that. That was pretty incredible. And then I did cardiothoracic surgery, and I got to be a part of a heart transplant. And that was also a really incredible and moving experience. And it really just showed me the range of the opportunities we get here at CU are vast and incredible. And the ability for us to be really involved in clinical care more than just observing. Like we really get the opportunity to get in there right next to the physicians and residents. And yeah, it's been a wonderful ride, but those are probably the top 2 right there.
Those sound amazing, Kyla, amazing. I can remember the first delivery I saw too. It affected me the same way, but I didn't go into OB, but nonetheless, thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right, so next is Alec's question. Alec, why did you pursue a career in your field and not something else?
So I think all the events of my life that have led me to being in medicine started somewhere in between me being born and my parents saying, look at our son, he's going to be a doctor, and the summer right before medical school. Somewhere in between there. But I was always a science kid. I had liked it. I don't know anything about law or economics. So that's where my weak points are, and I know how to focus on my strengths. So throughout college, I really wanted to go to medical school, and I learned and I studied to strive for that goal. But in between college and attending CU, I worked for a surgery private practice as one of the assistants for one of the physicians. And that was probably the most fulfilling work I've done throughout, any volunteering or hospital time in my life. Being able to have one-on-one encounters with patients, even though I'm yelling at insurance companies, getting yelled at by insurance companies, and patients, and the usual. It was one of the best 2 years that I've had, up to. I know I'm young, but the best 2 years so far, in the clinical space at least. And I make the fun comparison of after I had quit that job for just the couple of months before I started medical school, I worked for my parents, and I was doing some website design for their business, and I had half the hours, no stress, twice the pay, and I hated going to work every single day. I could not stand it. I couldn't wait to leave. It really made me miss the stressful clinical space that, even though I was underpaid and overworked, it was what I love to do. And I think it really solidified that I made the right decision to come into medicine. Not saying that I would like to be overworked and underpaid, but I've done it before and I know that I liked it. So let's hope we can keep going.
Sounds like a sure thing. Thank you. Does that mean you're going to be a surgeon?
If I don't go into surgery in one form or another, I might follow Dean Reilly's suit and take on critical care pulmonology, but I'm not set in stone yet, so we'll see.
Yeah, there's plenty of time. All right, thank you very much. All right, lastly is Brenda. So Brenda, what are some of your personal and professional goals?
That's such a big question, and I feel like there's like so much. I feel like I'm always setting goals for myself, so they're always changing. But a few currently on my personal goals list, I think, is just maintaining physical and mental health. I think we're constantly being told, and I think I learned pretty early on too, that I can't do my best taking care of others if I don't take care of myself first. And I want to live by that moving forward as well. And just to always remember to be kind and compassionate as a human being. And a very random goal that's been on my list for a few years now is to have a farm and to like own like some land and some chickens and horses and my own crops. I think it'd be super fun just to have like land to just run around on. So professionally, when I made the decision to pursue medicine, it was very important to me to be able to work with the underserved community. I had experiences throughout my journey growing up at Dawn Clinic, which Dean Reilly had mentioned earlier, the student-run free clinic here in Aurora, in Alaska, and in my neighborhood, that just continually inspired me to want to do something for this population. So before medical school, I spent a year volunteering at the Dawn Clinic, and where I stayed from 6 p.m. till about midnight every Monday. I was a care coordinator, and I saw patients and would go over their appointment with them, do follow-up, discuss their life, address socioeconomic barriers, and just to see what else we can do to help. And sometimes we couldn't do much, but when we were able to, it just made a huge difference. I just remember calling a ton of different patients, calling a ton of different apartment complexes actually for patients to help a specific patient look for like new housing. And also remember just like hugging a gentleman who missed his wife who he had lost. And it's just, I think, being in the position to learn about a patient beyond a diagnosis is what is so important to me, and it gave me the purpose and motivation to be better, and more than anything else could ever do. So yeah, professionally, I think working with underserved communities and just working with them to tackle the health disparities that exist and to never stop learning.
Thank you so much, Brenda. What an inspiring, all of you. What inspiring comments. All right, so now I would like to have our audience enter any questions that you may have for our students into the chat box, just as you did for Dean Reilly at the bottom of your screen. Vanessa Duran, Associate Director of Alumni Relations and Advancement, will be reading your questions. And be specific if you want a particular student to answer, but if not, then we'll let all three answer.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. We have our first question. How many of your classmates are going to become child psychiatrists?
I think in my class, there are 3 that I can think of who are very set on it, and a couple more that are set on psychiatry and thinking about child psychiatry. So a pretty good handful.
I know our class is not as set in stone as Kyla's, but there's only one I can think of, Brenda, and it's Katie Chase Martin. I know she wants to go into child psychiatry, and I don't know if you can think of any others, but we have at least one that's set in stone right now.
Yeah, I will also add, I think it's a little early on to know, but I know that we have a lot of good role models who are in child psychiatry that I think a lot of people look up to. So we will see.
As an adult psychiatrist, I cannot encourage your classmates more. So go ahead.
Great. So we have a couple more. What is the debt load for all of you? We'll start with that one.
Fortunately, I'm in state, and so that is helpful in that regard. And I do have a scholarship through, I'm in the rural track because I'm really interested in rural medicine, and I have a scholarship through that. That said, it is not insignificant, and it is something that I will be paying off for a long time.
Yeah, I think similar to Kyla, I'm also in state, so I'll let Alec speak since he is out of state. But I do want to thank, if there's any members from the class of 1969 on this call, I just want to thank you all. I am one of the recipients for the scholarship from the class of 1969, so thank you all so much for helping me get here. I really appreciate it.
As the out-of-stater, I do have the additional cost, we'll just say cost of doing business from being from Michigan. So the debt is, I don't want to say doubled, because we looked at the numbers from Dean Reilly and it was about $100,000 more total across the 4 years. And I would say that's about accurate. I think after the first couple of years, it will be about 100 or so that I'll be looking at. But again, like Brenda, I am a recipient of one of the scholarships. I don't know the year specifically, but it was the Leadership Scholarship Award. So thank you to anyone that was a part of that, because that really helps going to tuition and taking a lot of stress off of our shoulders.
We appreciate that, and we will make sure to share those alumni that supported those scholarships. So thank you. We have some more questions. What are the plans for those going into internal medicine and pediatrics, such as do they plan to specialize?
I think I might also have a better idea about that one. I think it's probably around 50-50. Just talking with my classmates, there are a lot of my classmates want to do primary care and stay general, and then there are a few who've been really inspired by an interaction with a faculty member or on a rotation, and for that reason are specializing. But I think just anecdotally thinking about my class, it's probably around 50-50.
Great. Okay. So how involved docs from the community participate in your training? Is it more in residency?
You guys want to start with that one?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest areas that docs in our community participate in our training is through preceptorship that we start in our first year. I love my preceptor. She's also from Michigan. I don't know if they planned that or if I just got lucky. She is in family med, as a lot of our preceptors are either in family med, emergency medicine, or internal medicine, just so that we can see a wide variety of patients in our first couple of years. We spend anywhere from 30 to 40 hours a semester with them, and that's not including any volunteer opportunities that we take. That's through our curriculum, and that we're really grateful for. It's really nice to be a part of our community and learn that way.
Yeah, and I will also add that I feel like most of our small groups are actually run by the physicians too, and they also give our lectures. So they're very involved in our training very early on, and they're very open to having us shadow them very early on as well. So we definitely have those opportunities, which is awesome.
Great. All right. This is for all of you. What has it been like going remote for school? What are some challenges you have had? And has anything surprised you about going remote?
You guys probably also have a better idea of being in the classroom setting about that than I do.
So the classroom itself is a little different because now we're all behind a screen. The only in-person interaction that we have is small groups on campus for training on clinical skills. So if we're learning how to do an additional neuro exam or a cardiovascular pulmonary exam, that's in person because we still need to learn those skills, and that's difficult to do over a camera. But lecture-wise, we're all virtual, and it's made things difficult. At least for us second years, we have established friend groups that we can get together if necessary in small groups to study with each other, or at least have connections for support. But I know the first years are struggling a lot with making friends and making connections and dealing with sometimes 8+ hours a day where you're sitting in front of a screen on Zoom. So it is hard. It's made things harder.
All right, and this next question is from one of our 1970 group. Hello and thanks. As you may know, the profession has faced an epidemic of burnout, both in the academic and community settings. How are you all thinking about this? Know that your stories are inspiring. Keep it up. Best, Kelly Scaff.
That's a really interesting topic, and it's something that's brought up to us pretty early in our medical school training, that burnout happens and that it's possible. But we're not just told about that, we're also taught ways to handle that burnout. And some of the really big things that CU emphasizes, like Brenda was talking about, are mental and physical health. And so, and like Dean Reilly was talking about, we have free access to our health and wellness center, which is always packed full of medical students. And so we take it pretty seriously to study hard, but also give ourselves a break to prevent that burnout from happening.
And can I ask one question in there of Brenda and Alec? Does that start pretty early in your training, this information and education about burnout?
Yeah, even during, like, as early as orientation, I think during orientation, we have a whole session dedicated to just talking about how important it is to take the time to do self-care and to basically just be very aware of like where we're at, and if we're feeling something, or if we're like sensing that we're a little off, to always reach out to like the Office of Student Life and different resources that are on campus. So it's presented pretty early, and then it's also reminded again throughout the whole curriculum. And I think we have a pretty close relationship with the deans of student life, so we're all able to reach out whenever we need it.
Thank you.
All right, here's another one from the class of 1970. I'm a retired pediatrician and suggesting that the 1970 retired docs might write up a one-page article about their careers and what suggestions that they think might be helpful to your careers. You don't get all the experience in medical school and residency, so some later experiences may be helpful to you. Interested in a book of stories, Dr. Nupin?
Yes, very much so. I think that would be incredible. Just thinking very quickly, I think that would be really amazing to share with our classmates.
I second that.
As the co-presidents of our respective classes, we have the power to distribute that across the entire student body. So if you end up drafting that, we'll send it to everybody.
All right, class of 1970, you heard what our next steps are. So great. All right, we have another question. How much time do you spend in the CAPE and BAR labs? I see some pondering going on. Kyla, do you want to answer first?
Yeah, I can start, and then these guys will be able to jump into because they're a little bit closer to it. In the first and second years, we spend, I want to say, at least once a week in CAPE, practicing with the standardized patients. And we do it in very informal learning sessions where we practice new exam techniques, and we also do it in very formal testing environments. And so we have all ranges of pressure while we're in there, and it's incredible practice to be able to have real people in front of us who are these standardized patients for us to learn from. Oh, and the bar labs, we have a lot more exposure to that in our third year when we're in, especially our surgical rotation, we spend time in there. And then I think in our emergency rotation, we also spend time in there.
I was going to say, I didn't know what the bar labs were, so I guess I'll have to look forward to next year to doing those. But similarly, in the Cape, recently we haven't been there every week because of everything. But I think we are there at least once a month now under these restrictions, which is, I think, fine. One of the sessions that we do with standardized patients is some communication sessions where we don't really practice our clinical skills per se, but we practice our skills in how to talk to patients. And that over Zoom is actually pretty helpful because now that docs have had 100 times increases in telehealth appointments, we kind of need to know how to talk to someone through a computer. So it's still helpful, even if we're not physically there.
Great. Oh, this is a great question. What was your gross anatomy experience? In 1976, we spent a year with a fellow who gifted us his body. We learned anatomy along with this generous fellow. Is it the same now?
Similar, a little less time. I think our anatomy spanned over maybe 2.5 months, maybe 3 months. But we do dissections of a donor, a cadaver donor, in person in small groups. When I was doing it, we had groups of 4 at a time per donor, and we dissected from start to finish over those 3 months and did a lot of hands-on learning that way.
Yeah, for Alex and my class, we did very similar, like hands-on learning like that. And to speak on behalf of the first year class, their year is a little bit different now. So they have pro sections that they are going to the lab to look at instead. So they're not doing a hands-on dissection this year.
All right, and we have a comment here. You guys are great. In Michigan, I'm an active member of our county's medical society. For me, this keeps me active in supporting the delivery of competent patient-focused medicine. The number of doctors who are on their own is diminishing. And I believe that is all the questions I see.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you. And thank you so much to our students, to Kyla, Brenda, and Alec. We are very appreciative of your time and we wish you the best. And even more than that, as an older doctor, I'm so inspired and so grateful that you are coming behind me, and you will carry the legacy of CU School of Medicine very well for us. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Dr. Williams.
Thank you.
That was a joy. Thanks, Alec. All right, thank you for coming. I want to remind you all to continue to stay engaged with the CU School of Medicine and with one another. There are many ways to get involved and help impact our students. For example, you can become a preceptor. You can mentor students through programs such as First Up that helps to support first-generation medical students. You can be a specialist informing students in the specialty speed networking. You can join the Medical Alumni Association Board of Directors and more. As president of the Medical Alumni Association, I would just like to say a word about our board. There are 30 delightful, hardworking, creative, multi-specialty and multi-generational members. And some are retired, some are actively practicing, some are just beginning their careers in medicine. We also have medical student members and house officer representatives. So it's my privilege to work with them. Some folks are local and some folks are out of state, so there's room for everyone. After the reunion, you will receive an email with more information about how to get involved and upcoming events. Thank you all for attending this afternoon. Have a wonderful time at your virtual class receptions at 6 p.m. this evening. Take care.